And then there's Marty Jannetty. No story that begins with those 5 words is going to end well. Marty Jannetty is going to go down as one of the sadder stories of a guy who had a ton of talent but could not keep his shit together. Someone who loved the party life on the road. He loved everything that came along with it. The booze, the women, the drugs, especially the women and the drugs. It looks like he still does. If you follow him on Facebook, if you see any of these posts, you hear the stories, he's still that guy. He was a great wrestler, though. And as talented as he was, to show you exactly how sad of a story he truly is, the 3 things that Marty Jannetty will most be remembered for is being thrown through a window, going on Facebook and asking people for advice on whether he should have sex with a girl he thought was his daughter, but the DNA test said she wasn't, and then he later claimed that he lost his phone and he didn't post that and somebody hacked it and wrote it for him. He's full of shit. And the third thing that he will forever be known for when they write this man's obituary, he'll be remembered as the wrestler who murdered a man he says tried to molest him outside of a bowling alley when he was 13 years old. Which, if that's true, that, someone did try to do that to him or did that to him, that's a horrible thing. But this is Marty Jannetty. He loves to tell stories. And some wild, far-out stories. It's hard to know if it's the drugs talking or if he's actually telling the truth. And short of finding human remains, we may never know for sure. What we do know is that the police in Georgia, where Jannetty claims the incident took place, are now looking into it. The first step, they say, is to see if there are any reports of missing persons from that time period. But they also have a lot of other investigations going on right now, and they said that right now this is not a priority for them. Now, here is the post. Here's the Facebook post that Marty Jannetty decided to randomly wake up and write this past week that ended up sparking a police statement and possibly a police investigation. This is what he wrote. I never told no one this, even my brother Gino, because Gino would have killed him and I didn't want my brother gone. He had only recently come home from Vietnam. I was 13 working at Victory Lane's bowling alley buying weed from a gay man that worked there, and that's not the word he used. That's not what he said. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave that up to your imagination. And he put his hands on me. He dragged me around to the back of the building. You already know what he was going to try to do. That was the very first time I made a man disappear. They never found him. They should look in the Chattahoochee River. But Winnie, the girl in these photos, I like you so damn much, probably my favorite. But I promised myself way back then nobody would ever hurt me again. That includes you. I loved you, but you hurt me with your effing Jamaican jealousy. You can go your own way. I don't need you. Well, you might say that she was Jamaican him crazy. Anyway. But he included photos of a woman who I guess was either his girlfriend or his fling or he thought was his girlfriend. Who knows? Who knows and who cares? I will say it was a little off-putting, though. The fact that he wakes up one day and tells this story where he claims to have murdered somebody and then ties it back into this woman who I guess he feels betrayed him or offended him in some way or let him down. I think this was less a post about telling people, by the way, I was molested and then I killed a man. I think it was less a matter of that and more a matter of trying to intimidate this woman. That to me was one of the more off-putting things about this post. Clearly he was telling that story to try to scare this woman, and hopefully this woman can get far, far away from him, because that does not sound good. But he deleted the post shortly thereafter. It started spreading, though, like wildfire. And it made headline news. It made national headline news all over the country, all over the world, on some websites. The next day, he tried to clarify things on Boston Wrestling's YouTube channel. He says that when he was 13, He worked at the bowling alley and the front desk clerk attempted to sexually assault him. He said that he knew the man sold weed, which is why he went to see him in the first place, but he didn't know that he lured children. He claimed the man fondled him inside of his car, and when he tried to get out, the man got angry. He says the guy pulled him out of the car. Marty had his pants pulled down, and he reached for a nearby brick that was on the ground, and he grabbed the brick, and he struck the guy. And he said the guy didn't deserve to die, but he did deserve to get his ass beaten. He says that he didn't intend for the guy to die. He said the trauma of nearly being raped and killing someone and then throwing their body into the river and then finding out on the news that the man was missing, all of this, he says, affected him badly. Now, if Jannetty is to be believed, he would have been 13 years old in 1973. So that's the year that this would have happened. There are no unsolved murders in the state listed online before the year 1980. So right now it's impossible for us to know if he's telling the truth. That's going to be on the police to check their own records and see if there's any reports at all. And he claimed that he remembers there being news reports of a missing person. Well, if that's the case, then there would be a record of that. I can't imagine it would be very hard for the police to check. Maybe we can't, but they should be able to. But it doesn't sound like it's too much of a priority right now because I don't know that they think that this is necessarily a legitimate confession. But, I hear this story and it made me think of Scott Hall. Scott Hall is another name that's been associated with drinking, being destructive to himself throughout his career. Talented guy, but man, just one fuck up after another, right? And arrests and all this stuff. People trying to get him help in and out of rehab maybe a dozen times, right? We've heard these stories about him as well. And he traces it back to the night that he shot a man to death outside of a bar in a fight over a girl. He claims the guy pulled a .45 caliber on him. He wrestled it away from him, and he shot him in the head at point-blank range and killed him. And he was charged with a crime. We know it happened because he was charged with second-degree murder, and the charges were dropped because of a lack of evidence against him. This is what he talked about on his ESPN 30 for 30 special. And he said he should have sought counseling after the incident, but he didn't. And it messed him up for the rest of his life. Sounds like Jannetty is maybe trying to explain why he is the way he is because of this traumatic event from his childhood. The Scott Hall story, which is just his side of the story, by the way, although we know apparently he did kill someone, but this is his version of how it all went down. That's a sad story. That here's this young guy who he claims he was just defending himself and doesn't know any better than to get help and just sort of buries it. He just buries it deep within, hoping to just forget about it. It's sad. It's a sad story. A lot of people repress things like that and it comes back to haunt them later in their life, or it just haunts them throughout their entire life and it leads to destructive behavior. Now, who knows, right? Who knows why Scott Hall did the things he did and does the things he does, but that's a sad story. When he told that story, I remember thinking, man, that's sad. And I really hope that Jannetty is not just making this up for attention, but it is possible that, he's just telling tall tales. Right now, we just don't know for sure. But color me skeptical. Color me skeptical, not even necessarily that he may have been assaulted or somebody tried to assault him, but that, he killed the guy with a brick and he dragged the body into the river. This 13-year-old kid is going to beat somebody to death and then drag their body or carry their body to a lake or a river that, as far as I can tell, because I was curious if that bowling alley was even still there. I figured it probably wasn't. I mean, this was 1973. It doesn't look to me in doing a search online like the bowling alley is there. It doesn't look like it's been there for a while. I don't think it was anywhere near this lake or this river that he mentioned. I Google mapped it. It looks like it was 10 miles away. Now, if somebody knows that area of Georgia better than I do, then feel free to correct me if I'm not accurate. But yes, I am skeptical about that part of the story. In the same interview that he did with Boston Wrestling's YouTube channel, he claimed, again, he's trying to clean this up now. He claimed that he never said that he killed the guy, only that he disappeared. Now, yes, he disappeared. He did like a ninja. Like a ninja. WWE should sign him. Well, I guess he's dead. But WWE should sign him. I hear they love ninjas. He didn't kill him. He made him disappear. We all know he said it. He tried to delete it. He was hoping people wouldn't see it, but they did. He claimed that he killed a man. Plain and simple. There's no misinterpretation. There's no shoddy news reporting, fake news. We know what we saw. That's what he said. I think he's nervous now that the cops, said they would investigate, and he regrets putting that post up. What he should regret is trying to intimidate this woman, which is clearly what he was trying to do. So now he's doing damage control. Jannetty's whole life has been nothing but damage control. If he ever writes a book, the title could be Damage Control, the Marty Jannetty story. It's also, troubling to hear him say that it was the very first time. Let's not overlook that, because words matter. And the words he chose to use was that this was the very first time I made somebody disappear, implying that there was a second time, and maybe a third, and a fourth. I think Marty Jannetty needs to stop giving interviews, and that hacker that supposedly stole his phone and hacked into his phone and put the post up about his would-be daughter a few years ago. We need that hacker to hack back into his account and change his password, because it is clearly not doing him any good. But more than anything, I come back to the word sad. I come back to the word sad when I think of Marty Jannetty. He is a sad case of what happens when wrestling is all that you know. He is Randy the Ram, only less charismatic. He is Randy the Ram, only less successful. He is a real-life example of Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler. Wrestling is all that he has ever known. He doesn't have anything else. He's not married. He has no kids that he knows about. And the one that he thought he had, he wanted to have sex with once he found out that she wasn't his. He's got a broken down body and a mangled ankle. If you've ever seen photos of it, I have no idea how he can even stand up straight. Bushwhacker Luke once tried to get him some help from DDP, but he bailed on him. And look, and about the DDP thing, because I've heard people say that too. Why can't DDP help Marty Jannetty? DDP can help him. I think the thing that people forget, DDP is not a counselor. He's not a drug counselor. He's not a professional counselor. The idea that you can just put anybody in DDP's crib, well, you're not putting anybody in there right now because of COVID, but the idea that, well, you could just send anybody and everybody to DDP, that's not the way this works. He's not a miracle worker. But Bushwhacker Luke was trying, as I'm sure a lot of wrestlers have tried over the years. He was trying, and Marty bailed. The way he talks, if you ever see his posts and everything, I don't know if he's just trying to be funny or what, but the way he talks about women is pathetic. Like he's still 20 years old, in the prime of his career. He's a 20-year-old kid trapped in the body of a broken-down 60-year-old. He claimed last year that he went on a 60-day bender after WrestleMania, and he had sex with his sex addiction counselor. I'm starting to think that a lot of these stories, maybe they're not exactly true. Maybe not all of these stories are true. Take everything that this man says with a giant grain of salt. The bender I can believe. Having sex with the sex addiction counselor, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. But this was last year. His posts last year when this happened, it read like a cry for help. He admitted, he said he misses the days of partying and being on the road every single week. And the WWF days back then, late 80s, early 90s, they had an inhumane schedule. I look at the schedule that they have today, when they are on the road full time and the international tours and the trip to Saudi and then back and right to the next taping. And that's brutal enough. I don't think I could do that. But you think that's bad. That's nothing compared to the way it used to be back in the mid to late 80s. Where they had a C team, an A team, a B team, and a C team. They were running multiple shows every night. Flying these guys these guys could work a West Coast show, and then, that could be the matinee. They could have an evening show all the way on the other end of the country. No wonder all those guys did the things they did and medicated and hid injuries. It's inhumane, but he relishes it. He misses that. He was on the road all the time. Now he's not. He misses that. He says now he lives in the backwoods of Alabama and he only wrestles on some weekends. He says he's bored. He has nothing better to do. So what does he do? He goes on a bender. That's sad. And it's not as if other wrestlers have not offered to help him in the past, but he has to want to help himself. And he just can't do it. Look, WWE, they signed him to a contract. Didn't last very long, but they signed him to a contract in 2005 when they brought him back. And it was only like a cameo thing. They were building to Shawn Michaels against Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21. And Kurt Angle's whole thing was, anything you can do, I can do better, which is what led to the match with him and Marty on SmackDown. They had a very good match. But that same week is when they did the Rockers reunion, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty together on TV. Marty had a great week and he impressed a lot of people. He looked like the Jannetty of old. And they signed him to a contract and they were hopeful that he could be maybe like a coach for them. Yeah, he wasn't going to get like a massive push, but he was back in the good graces of WWE. He got a contract. And he screwed it up. And I think Marty Jannetty could have been a big asset to the company as a coach. I think he could be a big asset to any company in that kind of role if he had his head on straight. Or be the veteran that younger talents can work with and sit under the learning tree. Maybe he still can be. Look, a lot of people wrote off Jake the Snake, and he turned his life around and even got a deal with AEW. He was, people used to have death pools. When you were hearing about wrestlers every other day, it seemed like, passing away. You don't think that Jake was near the top of that list on a lot of people? And look at him now. It seems unlikely, but never say never. This is a guy who, to this day, people, when they talk about tag teams that break up, the guy who goes on to great success, he's the Shawn Michaels. The guy who goes on to maybe have a marginally okay career. Or maybe they end up not going anywhere. He's the Jannetty of the team. I'm sure that must eat away at him. And it's kind of shitty that people talk about him like that. But a lot of it was his own doing. He would get himself into trouble and get himself into situations where he wasn't exactly a perfect angel. A lot of that falls on him. He's a very talented guy, very good wrestler. Could have had a lot more good years in him. But when I hear him make comments like this, and then I see stories about, benders and this and that, but Marty Jannetty will forever go down as one of the sadder cases in pro wrestling.